When was donating my kidney, she said to me, I want to do it too when I'm done having children.
My guest today is Rabbi Dr. Shmuly Yanklowitz, a moral architect of our time. Rabbi Shmuly is a relentless author of 30 books, an activist who has stood at protest fronts, dinner tables, refugee camps, all the way to Davos and the White House.
The capacity for empathy in America has dropped 40% over the last few decades.
When did you first realize personal transformation must come before social transformation?
I really grew up pretty selfish. I grew up with a mentality that life was about being successful. It was about actualizing yourself. Do well in school and go get a great job and get yourself a home and a family and have a happy life. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way most people live. But I started to see the emptiness in that humanity is so interconnected. All life is so interconnected. And we desperately need each other, not only for our own survival, but for our own thriving.
So what are the character traits that drive you to tackle so many causes at once?
The first, which comes relatively natural for me, is alacrity. And the second one that I really strive for is empathy.
What have you unlearned recently about power, faith, or even your own sense of self, your own self of activism that not only surprised you, but that maybe you struggled or maybe you didn't, but you saw this nominal shift?
We can be just as concerned with our to-be list as our to-do list. That our energy we give out in the world, it can be as impactful as the things we actually do. There's a middle ground of saying there is truth and it's complex and it's plural and it's...
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is Rabbi Dr. Shmuly Yanklowitz, a moral architect of our time, a child of both Jewish and Christian heritage, Harvard-trained ethicist, and Columbia PhD in moral development. Rabbi Shmuly is a relentless author of 30 books, an activist who has stood at protest fronts, dinner tables, refugee camps, all the way to Davos and the White House. He's also donated a kidney to a stranger a decade ago. And it's become a family endeavor because his wife did the same thing about 8 months ago, which we're going to get into. He's also built national initiatives for adoption, animal welfare. He's a vegan, refugee advocacy, and ethical food certification. His latest calling, which we're going to get into in depth right now, because I think it's really important that he's reached this level and started this. And I've spoken with him about this as well. Thrive by Character tackles the great, not only American rift, but what we're seeing globally. Can we heal our soul before we heal our systems? Hello, Rabbi Shmuly, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Ali, it's wonderful to be with you, and I love the work you're doing, and it's a true honor, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump into the first question, which is, your life has fused activism, ethics, and radical generosity. I mean, donating an organ, a kidney to a stranger. When did you first realize personal transformation must come before social transformation? And the reason I ask this is because you hear a lot of people talking about community and social, and the world has to do this, or the government has to make this policy and whatnot. And, you go back to great speeches like Ask Not What Your Country Can Do For You, and many other people throughout history who've always put the onus on the person to say, start here. How did that come to you? How did that vision start with you?
I love that question. And it's, I'm always going to give personal answers, because I'm skeptical of just purely intellectual answers. And so on a personal level, I really grew up pretty selfish. I grew up with a mentality that life was about being successful. It was about actualizing yourself. And there were great people out there, but most of us are just to try to get as much as we can for ourselves. Do well in school and go get a great job and get yourself a home and a family and have a happy life. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way most people live. But I started to see the emptiness in that humanity is so interconnected. All life is so interconnected. And we desperately need each other, not only for our own survival, but for our own thriving. And I had this childlike understanding of how social change works. I looked at moments like Rosa Parks. Oh, the moment Rosa Parks sat down on the bus, that's when it all happened. But that's not when it all happened. There were millions of other people involved in different ways. That moment was carefully choreographed. And we point to these moments as if they're the game-changing moments when actually they weren't. One of the first moments as a kid, I saw the play Les Miserables, Les Mis. And in Les Mis, Jean Valjean comes out of jail after decades in jail, and he steals from the pastor's house. And the pastor forgives him. He covers for him so he doesn't get arrested again. And in that moment of grace and mercy from this Christian leader, Jean Valjean experiences a personal transformation of what his life is going to be about. Why did this man believe in me? Why did he give me this grace of forgiveness? Why did he cover for me? He's confused by that. And so that planted a seed in me of the power of one-on-one kindness to change the world. And when I entered the world of social activism, I forgot that. I was like, it's all about screaming in the streets. It's all about the loud stuff. But then I met people who cared about the ends, but not the means. They might lie on the way to win a campaign. They might be really mean-spirited, even if they're working for some compassionate end. And I learned that the means is just as important as the ends if we're trying to get somewhere. The other big moment for me was realizing the futility of political revolutions. Now, I'm someone who believes that we should be involved politically. It's certainly one of the tools for social change. But I met so many people who put all of their faith in political leaders, that if we just had this candidate win, if we just had this party win, everything in the world would be utopia, right? I mean, it's unbelievable to me that people still believe that, right? They don't see how power corrupts. They don't see how people change their positions once they're in power. They don't see how a party wins or legislation wins and then it all gets reversed to a new level. And so I realized more than a political revolution, we need a spiritual revolution. A spiritual revolution where people's minds and hearts fundamentally change. And so long story short, to your great question, I'm still kind of brain drying myself from the teachings of society that it's all about this social transformation as opposed to this personal transformation. And I believe so deeply that if we want to change the world, it starts with changing us. And the best influence we can give to the world is by how we live rather than just by what we teach.
That's a great answer. And you know what? Even when you go back to these historic moments that we have, you gave the example of what you saw, but I mean, you go back into Moses' story, same thing. There was a personal transformation, right? You go into, Gandhi's story, there was a personal transformation. You go into so many people and there's this huge personal transformation before they influence the public. And sometimes they don't even intend to influence the public. The influence happens by itself, right? I mean, you have somebody like the Buddha, for example, myth or real, doesn't matter. The point is, it was a person on a personal journey, and then that personal journey transcended to this huge social thing that people use, right? So you're absolutely right. It has to start from within, and it's kind of.
So I love your example. So I mean, the Buddha is in this palace, and he needs to leave this palace and encounter these people that really shake him to his core. He needed to leave his comfort zone. Nelson Mandela is full of hate in prison until he comes to love his prison guards, even though they're mean to him. I mean, Gandhi, the same thing. MLK is doing spiritual writing every day to kind of process his own emotions, understanding this need for transformation that no leader, no moral leader is going to survive being as a morally influential person if they're not doing that inner work.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we don't have a lot of those kind of historic figures, because we've shifted, right? We've shifted
That's
that position. Social media, all these other things, like the media is important, the social is important, the personal is no longer that important. And you start seeing that personal, though, when you go to these, off the path places and you see people in these monastic lives, whatever religion they're following, or whatever faith they have, or whatever system they follow, and an order they follow, and you see the personal really affect that growth. Now,
and so to say something critical about both religion and about the effective altruism movement, both of them are good, of course, but religion, if you just go on a hilltop and meditate, and you don't actually engage with society, you've missed something fundamental about our responsibility.
Right.
But take the opposite end of all the good of effective altruism movement, of trying to measure impact, right? If all we're interested in impact and not character, there's a superficiality there as well. We can potentially create more harm than good. Now, that movement is interested in saving lives and interested human lives, animal lives. There's a lot of good there. But if we're not also cultivating righteousness along the way, we've missed something. So we have to think about impact, but we have to think about inner life as well. And that balance, it's a constant dance. It's a constant dance.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. You see that totally lost in Islam today, because you go back to the origin of Islam, the prophet of Islam, Muhammad, he meditated in a cave for many, many years. And then he came back to his people and said, I have a way. I have heard God, and however the story went and goes, there was that connection from the cave to the people. Today, Islam has no meditation. It's just follow rules.
Right.
Do this, do this, do this,
well,
do this.
I am a part of traditional Judaism as well.
Yes.
I have the same critique. Being in the traditional Jewish world, I see people who feel that all God wants is to follow certain rules, and that's about it. There's no actual spiritual life besides saying the word.
Yes.
So it's a global phenomenon. You're right.
Yeah. I've lived half my life in Toronto, and I had a lot of Jewish friends when I was in Toronto, because, there's a big population of Jewish people there. And I had Orthodox friends and none. And some of them would say, you're not Jewish, turn the lights on, because I can't. And I said, wait a minute, how does that work? Because they're following an order, right? That if he didn't turn the light on, it's fine. And I said, no, you got to go deeper. You cannot really believe that, but they did. And so to me, like what you're saying, I see it in Islam, I see it in Judaism, I see it in Buddhism, I see it everywhere. People are just finding a way to just follow a certain order without the character. And that's what's destroying that honest faith of what it means to be Jewish in essence, or Muslim in essence, in a sense. And I love what you're doing, because a lot of what you're doing is showing that from the inside. Now, you found organizations across issues. You've done a lot. You don't, and this is something years after you, I'm coming to realization with as well. I started when I had my transformative moment, in a sense, and said, okay, I'm quitting the finance world. I'm going to do something that's worth it. That when I meet my God, I can be proud of whatever blessing I had in this world, right? And I can say, I tried. Maybe I was awful, but I tried. At least I can say that. And that is really the first motivation of why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. But I realized, you know what, I'm going to touch on animal issues because, the poor animals. And then I thought, but wait, if I want to touch on the animal issues, but this connects to that and that connects to this, and everything is so interconnected that you can't just be a vegan and not address the fashion industry. You can't not address the inequality there and then not address this. And it just, everything goes, environmentalism, everything goes hand in hand. And so it just became this ginormous thing. And then I look at you, and here you are, one day, you're protesting refugee issues and talking about that. The next day you're here talking about the case with animal welfare, even within religion and without. And then another day you're talking about something else every day. So what what are the character traits that drive you to tackle so many causes at once? Because I want to learn that about myself too. What is it that all these people today that I notice are no longer specialized activists, right? Because over the last few decades, we've had very specialized activists. I only deal with this. I only write books about this. I only deal with this. I don't care if there's a war going on over there. That's not my expertise. I'm only an expert here. Now, I'm finding a lot of people are like us. They're coming out and they're saying, no, the whole world is problematic. So
yes,
what are the traits that bring those people to the forefront?
I love that question. Thank you. And I'll say, like, I get a lot of critique from people who don't like me, but the best critique I get from people who like me is, why are you doing so much? Like, you'd be so much more effective if you just did this one thing. And I hear it all the time. Like, are you the foster care guy? Are you the animal guy? Are you the refugee guy? Like, are you the homeless guy? What are you about? And like you, I share a critique of those who just want to stay in one lane. I've been asked to lead organizations that are just one cause and said, I can never do that. Like you said, it's so interconnected. The world is so large. You can't close off your compassion. And yet we see on the other end people who, feel they need to speak about everything happening all the time. They're just, and they really stretch themselves beyond their own expertise. And so there is this middle ground. And I'd say there's two traits for me that I'm striving for here. The first, which comes relatively natural for me, is alacrity, quick to move. And that can be a virtue and a vice, of course. I think I'm beyond the more, youthful stage of impulsiveness, but sometimes I can be too quick to move. But I think in general, I have a sense of death consciousness. I have a sense that we have one life. Maybe, reincarnation will bracket that conversation. Let's assume we have one life, and we have a calling to do a lot. And so I feel an urgency to do that work. I also feel like I won the lottery, being born when I'm born, having been educated, and in an era where there's so many ways to work for change. So I feel so fortunate, and I feel like that gratitude channels into this alacrity. And the second one I would say that I really strive for is empathy. And I think that really a middle ground, where an empathy where I really do care. I really do care about suffering. It really does keep me up to think of a child being abused. It keeps me up to think of an animal, being born in a box without light, stripped from their mother, and never experience anything good in their life and then being killed shortly after. It keeps me up at night to think about people who are refugees trekking through deserts without any place that they're allowed to call home. And yet I don't feel paralyzed by the emotions of empathy. I feel like there's a little bit of an emotional aspect and a little bit of a cognitive aspect. And empathy is on the decline. They did a study at the University of Michigan a few decades ago, and then they revisited it. They said the capacity for empathy in America has dropped 40% over the last few decades. Right? People are less capable of imagining what it's like to be someone other than themselves. And so I point to those two. And what I want to say here is that while I think we should work on all of the character traits, I do think we all have kind of innate predispositions, and we should build off those. Some of us are given certain character vices and certain character gifts. And I think we should harness those gifts in terms of our social change approach. And so I'm trying to kind of capitalize on those two. And I've got a long way to go. To ensure that this work can be effective.
I like those two. And I think, I like the action part of the first trait you mentioned, because when I thought of coining the word compassiviste, I was looking for, we need to develop that compassion. Like you said, empathy is dropping so poorly, and that connects to your ability not to have compassion, but to act in compassion, right? And there was no word in the English language. There are words in older languages for compassion in action, which are specific words in Arabic and Hebrew. But then when you come to English, you don't find that. So I said, we need a word to let people know that compassion doesn't stop by saying, oh, poor animal, oh, poor guy, as I continue my path. It says, no, poor guy, you stop. Poor animal, you stop. And you say, what can I do? And then you do that which you think you can do, right? Which really was the basis for Compassiviste. How do we stop and get get the action going? And there was something touching that you said. You said you're blessed and you have gratitude for when you were born. And automatically I thought to myself, had you been born one generation ago, I might have read about you in the most awfulest way possible. So, I understand your gratitude from that space too, because not a lot of people understand how so close. I mean, we're literally talking one generation ago. You know, it kind of makes me stutter, but one generation ago, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here.
Thank you.
And that
Thank
gratitude is shared. It really is. When you say that, it moves me. So I just want you to, for the audience to always keep that in their minds, never mind all the stuff we're seeing on media and stuff, but just remember that. Now, I want to go something that touches a lot of people in the world today. And this is a side question, but I think you're a very good candidate for it. You come from Jewish and Christian heritage, and a lot of the audience don't know how difficult it is, especially in the Jewish religion, to be accepted, into the Jewish world when you come from this mixed heritage religiously and traditionally, right? And you converted to Orthodox Judaism, and there's a whole process to that. Again, I spent 20 years with a lot of Jewish people, so I studied it, so I know. But for a lot of people in today's world that's so interconnected and so many immigrants coming from around the world and so many people from different backgrounds. I mean, you go to places like the US or Canada and you see Muslims and Jews marrying, you see Christians and atheists marrying, and they have, they just separate that parts of their lives or whatnot. How has your personal journey influenced your view of how we can be included? I mean, this is a question again for our audience, but do you feel inclusion means just don't talk about it? Because a lot of households are doing that, right? The couple love each other, but then they're like, you do your ceremonies, I do my ceremonies, or I'll join in your ceremonies, whatever. Like, there's many different layers to inclusion, but rarely is it a whole appreciation and understanding and acceptance of the other. There's always this, no, I'm right, but you have your ways, whatever crazy things you're saying, I'll let you have them. That's kind of the impression. So tell me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love your breadth of understanding and your just concern for all and your ability to see from so many perspectives. It's really so admirable. There's a mental health crisis. I can't speak to globally. I know in America there is, and I've read there is beyond, but there's so many factors contributing to our age of anxiety. And belonging is so crucial. People who struggle with mental health, people who feel lonely, people who feel disconnected. And we have to figure out how community is going to be more inclusive and more tolerant. These are such important traits, inclusivity and tolerance. And sometimes we don't extend very far. We're tolerant to someone just slightly to the left of us, just slightly to the right of us, but not fully. And in my story, having grown up being raised by an evangelical Christian mother of blessed memory and by a Reform Jewish father, and having been given the choice at age 9 or 10 as to which direction to go, I felt that cosmic moment of a different path that was going to change my life and fate for generations to come. And there was a lot of pressure. And I feel that I want to reduce that pressure for other people to find themselves And the more we can welcome the stranger, again, immigrants, refugees, but also within our faith communities, within interfaith relationships, so that people just feel embraced for who they are. And one of the challenges is, Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist, the French existentialist, wrote about people being in bad faith. And what it meant to be in bad faith is that someone just assumes the role that they're told to be in. Oh, you're born as a Jew. You're born as a Muslim. There you go. Go be a good Muslim. Go be a good Jew. You're a waiter. Go do everything that looks like a good waiter, right? But in fact, to move beyond bad faith into authenticity means we all have to struggle to find ourselves, to come out of these small boxes of ideology and find ourselves. And sometimes to love people far beyond the box we were raised in. And so I feel it was a gift for me to have been raised in this interfaith home. And where as a young child, I loved people of different faiths. And I think it's very sad that some people grow up to only learn to love someone within their own faith. There's a stranger, they know how to be respectful maybe, but to love them. And so I would love to think a part of this transformation globally of like, how do we make sure that kids learn to love people of different faiths and races, love animals, love the earth, love God, but not just the God of one religion, just be overflowing with love.
I want to pick on one word you use, tolerance. I have this radical idea. I think tolerance is a problem, and I'll tell you why. The definition of tolerance means to not accept, but to endure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So within the definition, it means if I'm tolerant of you, say I'm a Muslim and you are Jewish and we become friends, and I say I'm tolerant of my Jewish friends. Tolerance has a shelf life, because it has a capacity life. Tolerance is not an infinite thing. You cannot be infinitely tolerant, because if you're infinitely tolerant, then you transform tolerance into acceptability. That is where the infinity kicks in. So the word tolerance, having this capacity that overflows if you fill it up too much, means one day I'll kill you. Or one day I'll be violent towards you. Or one day I will not befriend you. Why? Because you've reached your tolerance capacity. And I think the promotion of tolerance in many of our societies has become exactly that. We are today seeing that capacity overflow. And we're returning to a time where we are radicalizing, because our tolerance has, again, over a lifetime or two lifetimes, reached a capacity where we're no longer, because we feel I may feel tolerating you to a certain capacity is taking away from my ability to live as me in the order that I was born in, like you said, and I was raised in, and this is how I live, right? So there will come a time where, people in my community who are, say, radical Muslims will say, don't bring the Jewish person around. And I say, no, he's my friend and I'm tolerant. And it'll go a distance, but eventually in that radical community, it'll stop at some point. That point is where the violence turns back. So I want people, what I'm trying to bring out here is say, let's drop the tolerance altogether, because the tolerance begets the future that is violent. And instead of that, let's try to find the commonalities through which we can be united. So when I was born in Dubai. At the time when I was born in Dubai, and in the 80s, there were no Jewish people in Dubai. There was no Israeli people in Dubai. You couldn't come to Dubai as a Jewish person or an Israeli passport holder because the law didn't allow it. The Abrahamic Accord allowed it, which was just a few years ago. I mean, it's not far-fetched. Yeah. So when I left Dubai, went to Europe, went to Canada, I'd never seen a Jewish person in my life, or, interacted with one, or even seen one in film, because even then it was censored, right? So you just had no clue of what these people were, other than they're evil. That's the only rhetoric you heard. And so I get to Canada and I'm going to school, and everybody around me is Jewish all of a sudden. And I could have fought, but I didn't. I started seeing the commonalities, because I was like, wait, you guys pray? We pray. oh, wait, you guys don't do this? We don't do this. Oh, you guys, oh, so many things. And then, I start taking courses, and then in those courses, I start learning more about Judaism, about other, historical things. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, that's me. That's like, what's the difference between, and then I started realizing, one of the longest and most repeated stories of the Quran itself is Moses. And then it's Mary. Like, it's not even, shunning them or saying, don't forget those people. No, those are God's like people, right? And so I started coming out of that bubble of tolerance, of saying, I'm in a classroom with Jewish people. I have to do lab with them. So it's fine. I will do my lab. That's tolerance. And I said, no. That is my best friend. And then I went to their home, and their mom taught me about kosher kitchen and, all these other things. And I was like, what? We have the same thing. It's called halal, and it was just mind blowing for me. How are we not teaching these things, but we're teaching people, accept the Jewish people, don't punch him, or accept the Muslim, don't punch him. And that becomes the blow up of what we see today in parts of the world. And it bothers me.
That's so well said.
We're looking at things that way.
Yes. I think that's so well said. To go from intolerance as a stepping stone to tolerance, but ultimately to pluralism, where we can, embrace people more fully, understand the complexity of truth and multiple truths, and hear different narratives. And that comes down to being proximate. How do we get closer to people? It took you being in this college environment. I had my own experiences as such, of needing to travel around the world and get closer to people to really see their humanity. Now,
you launched Thrive by Character, and you're asking Americans to shift from the same thing, from the divisive rhetoric to discourse grounded in moral clarity, which is exactly that, what we just talked about a second ago. But first of all, it's very urgent. I agree. I know you're saying this all the time, that it's an urgent thing to do, which is why you started Thrive by Character. And I find that to be part of your growth. I know one day, when they open the books and they tell your story, there's going to be this hierarchical growth of Rabbi Shmuly to Thrive by Character, because went from the speech and the book and the writing and the talking to being involved to then, giving people the tools. And I think this is that last stage of, that famous, saying, don't give people fish, teach them how to fish. And you're now in that, highest capacity of being able to activate people. What are the conversations like for you, and what are the challenges of actually doing this? Because that's where the true hard work begins.
Yes. Thank you for asking that, because I feel, in America at least, that there's two dominant identities that have overtaken society. Mm-hmm. The first is the hyper-political identity. People are so committed to this political identity of, I'm a Trumpist, I'm an anti-Trumpist, whatever, that they've stopped thinking in many ways. And the second is consumer. People love to buy stuff and are constantly shopping and just working to buy more stuff. And we've lost this third space of arts and humanities and religion and society beyond being consumers and political people. And at the end of the day, I found that the political discourse, the political language, is simply too weak. It's too weak to bridge divides, to heal society. People are just in a box, right? On every issue, there's an automatic thing you say. And so I think we need a new discourse. And here I think that discourse is about inner life. That here, if we reflect on the challenges in the world through our own souls, through our own hearts, through our own characters, I think we can see our commonalities across political divides, across religious divides. And so this is not going to be easy to change the way we talk about issues. But I think the two greatest threats in the world today, and you just touched on this a moment ago, one is extremism. We have fundamentalists who are Christian fundamentalists, Muslim fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists, atheist fundamentalists, people who think they have the sole truth and their whole job is to get the world to believe what their truth. That's very dangerous. We know how dangerous that is. But then we also have relativists, radical relativists who say there is no truth. There is no moral right and wrong. There's no moral clarity. Life is about enjoy yourself. Go to the beach and have a nice drink because who knows what's true, right? And I think that's also a significant problem. There's a middle ground of saying there is truth and it's complex and it's plural and it can't be fully grasped, but we should fight for it and we should strive for it. There are moral goods worth living by. And so how do we start that new humble conversation of curiosity? It's exactly the spirit of your great podcast that you're leading here. A humble spirit of curiosity, of learning about people.
You know what? Even across the board, the people who are understanding that are saying the same thing. Because, when you touched on Jean-Paul Sartre, you go back into that era of French existential philosophy that just popped out, many of them, many famous ones came out in that era. They all have a moral code that they live by still. Even without the God involved. And then, you go to the Russian side of the moral ethics and Kantianism and things like that. Again, there's a moral code, whether it's involved with a God or a religious God or a non-religious spiritual God, right? There's always this moral code that guides, your actions essentially. And you are accountable for that. In existentialism, you're accountable for those actions in a moral sense. I think what's happening is what you touched on earlier, the consumerism is giving way to this feeling of, if I'm going to hyper consume and over consume, I cannot be accountable, because then, it just ruins my consumption. It's not fun anymore. It's not fun for me to just consume the whole world if I can and see it destroy and then feel accountable for it. So now I have to create this rhetoric in my head to believe that climate change is fake. This is fake. There is no poor people. There's no child labor. There's nothing like that. Why? Otherwise, I can't buy my $20,000 purse and feel good about it and feel achieved and feel successful and walk around and tell all the other people, look at me. I can't peacock anymore, right? And I think they kind of lead into each other because we've fallen so deep into that consumer culture that you're calling, one of the two major problems.
Yes, I love that. And let me just say one brief thing about that consumerism, because I know we share this value. It is, if we just promote guilt and shame, nobody's going to want to shift their consumer habits because it's already so hard to do it. If we promote this as exciting, right, that every time we buy something, it's a vote of our values. We can actualize ourselves. We are powerful as consumers to change the world, right? Changing the world is not just about donating money or voting for this person, that every time we're consumers, we are shaping our character. We are reshaping the world. That's exciting. Whether that has to do with workers, the land, animals, fair trade, whatever it is, like, we are powerful.
Yeah. That is an action, right? Your dollar speaks, but your dollar is not a stagnant currency. Your dollar is actually, that transaction that you make, that active shift, that active transfer of funds that you make to promote something. So you're buying plastic bottles of water. Don't blame Nestle for producing them, because you're telling them, please produce those. I'm buying them. Start not to produce, don't buy those, and they will stop producing it, because those poor guys over there, they're just going to shift to where the money is. That's all they're going to do. They're going to say, guys, plastic's look, go back to VHS tapes or cassette tapes. There are no factories in the world making those really anymore in those huge numbers. Why? The consumer and the tech changed to something new, and now everybody's listening to their music on Spotify, CD. None of this is really out anymore. It's just finished. All the stores closed. All of that happened. The consumer and the tech did that. It wasn't the CD maker who said, you know what, this is really not good. We're really using a lot of plastic, no, it was the consumer who said, we're changing, and they said, we're a reaction market. We're going to change with you. So I love that. That explanation from you. Now, speaking of these traits that are problematic today, I want to hear from you. What have you unlearned recently about power, faith, or even your own sense of self, your own self of, activism, that not only surprised you, but that maybe you struggled or maybe you didn't, but you saw this nominal shift, kind of like going to the gym and saying, I have to drop 5 pounds to be healthier. My doctor, told me my, cholesterol was high. And so you went through 3 months of rigorous exercise. You're like, Ali, it was so hard, but I did it, Run me through that treadmill moment of yours.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my gosh, it's another amazing question, and I have so many of these, but I'll point to one, which is that I think if I think of myself driving a car with a stick shift, I had one way of being, and that was just as fast as possible, right? It was like being in overdrive mode all the time, and what I had to unlearn was that the only way to be effective in the world is not in overdrive mode, going as fast as we can, that we can be just as concerned with being as we are with doing, right? We can be just as concerned with our to-be list as our to-do list, that our energy we give out in the world, it can be as impactful as the things we actually do. I thought I was trying to get somewhere in my career. I want to get here, then get there. And I want some prestige for this. I said, whoa, that means nothing. That means nothing, right? That actually we have to focus on this inner life. And I'll say one more thought about it, that I think spiritual leaders have 3 roles: to push, to pull, and to hold. And I think I primarily understood push and pull. There's people you want to push harder. There's people you want to pull in closer, but I don't think I understood the power of holding. And I think what most of us need fundamentally is to be held, to feel held by our mothers, to feel held by a partner, to feel held by friends, to feel held by the divine. And I think I learned that we don't just have to be agitators pushing for as fast as we can. There's a place to create real change by holding people. The more people feel supported and loved, the more they can bring their best selves to the world. And so I had to unlearn this way of being, which was about being in this rat race constantly.
Again, I really love when you said held by the divine, because often at Compassiviste, people ask me, how are we going to pay for all this? How are we going to do, and I say, God loves us. And they say, what do you mean God loves us? And I say, no, really believe it. But believe God loves us. And, they would ask me and say, what does that even mean? Like, is this one of those, like, just like whatever spiritual logo, motto things? And I said, no. If you really believe that, you're sitting here in your thoughts and your thoughts are coming to you, and these ideas and these, the growth of what we're doing is coming to us because of some divine love that is coming to you, then, it's not going to fail you. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to destroy you. It's going to be really beautiful to just sit there with it and be able to develop it, right? I mean, that in itself is this great, great blessing of knowing you're loved. Even if nobody loves you, you have this love that comes from a place that's so much grander than the whole world loving you together. So it's a real feeling.
Amen.
It's a real,
Amen.
It's a real holding. And I feel so, I don't feel bad. I don't feel angry. I just feel so sad for people who cannot reach or haven't reached that position. But I feel my anger goes towards the spiritual leaders, like you said, because they push and they pull. But if you just allow the people who come to your synagogue, to your church, to your mosque, to understand the feeling of being held, they will leave with so much more compassion in themselves because of that feeling, that they will change, they will transform just by that. And you're one of the handful of people, I can say, that I've ever heard from a spiritual, religious sector speak to me about divine love in that way. So I'm really impressed by that. Just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Now, I want to ask you about a quick question here. Looking ahead, Thrive by Character what you're doing here is trying to make that change, right? You're trying to make that change. Do you have a roadmap of whether, this happens through policy change or public behavior, or, that growth in your religious and spiritual self, or is it a combination of everything? Or how do you see one human being transforming essentially to the goal line, where if enough people did this, we will see a transformative collective?
Okay, I love this question so much because this goes back to another thing I had to unlearn. I view this exactly the opposite of trying to be something successful. I used to think, what are the metrics of success? What is the pathway? What's the strategic plan? And I still think about some of my work in those terms. But here I had this realization. I used to think if something is good, it will be popular. If it's valuable, people will want it. That is such a capitalistic influence. And I think there is so much garbage that is popular, right? There are people selling lies and millions of people want it. There are people who get elected to office who are crooks. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to launch this new project, Thrive by Character, with no measures of success. All I'm going to do is try to be authentically me and put out what I think is authentically good and believe in the power to attract the right people on that journey. That may be a lot of people. That may be a few people. That may mean massive transformation. It may mean very little. But what I know is that I can no longer measure the quality of what I think this character transformation project is about by whether it is popular or not, whether it achieves certain metrics of success. I want to just put it out there and then let go of it and feel like that is a part of my faith, that all you can do is put your most authentic good in the world and have some faith that that will do what it's supposed to do.
Wow. This is beautiful because if you ever see the original Compassiviste deck, when I went for funding, I had clients and I had friends and people from my previous world, and I went to them and I said, hey, I'm starting something new. It's going to be a game changer. And I want you guys to, invest into it. And they said, oh, okay, great. What is it? And I shared the whole thing, a 45-minute pitch. And then at the end, every single one except one person turned around and said, where's the ROI sheet? And I said, you're not for this. And I purposely said that because then they said, what do you mean? Especially very wealthy, very powerful people, they get offended when you tell them you didn't get it because how dare you, right? I'm Pharaoh. How dare you? And so I said, sorry, no, there isn't an explanation. And they pushed so much that I said, okay, you want the explanation? I'll tell you. You didn't understand that this is about transformation by investment, not return on investment. So you should be asking about the TBI instead of the ROI, but you don't know what TBI is because you've never heard it. You've never focused on it. You've never understood it. You still believe in the system where I'm going to invest in Tesla because it uses a different kind of fuel, disregarding the whole concept that it's the same car. And it's the same overconsumption. People have 3 Teslas in their house where they should have 1, for example, or none. So you're not changing anything in the world today. It's just a novel coolness. That's all it is. And so I said, you need to understand the transformational power of what we're trying to do to the individual. Yeah. And then that's where the measure of change becomes when you then go and see how this person is changing and the crime rate's reducing and poverty is less and the environment's healthier and all these lovely things are happening and you're thinking, where the hell did this come from? And that's where your investment pays off. And then you even will see economic benefit too, because there's more harmony in society. You're going to be a more, economically harmonious society, which means a better society overall. And, you're bringing joy, which is the highest human value to the table to everybody with sufficiency. If you didn't see that through the pitch, you're still stuck in a place where I'd have to explain all this to you. And then you say, oh, I get it now. One person got it. That one person actually turned around and said, you know what? Let's stick with this. I will fund the entire thing because I know sponsors and all these other people are going to come and hijack this. And they're going to say, no, we need to charge here. We need to make money there. And we need to, do subscription models here. And let's make some money. Let's plaster our logo over this program and all those things, right? And then it's gone. And then it becomes another capitalist endeavor and you've lost it out of your hands. So let's keep it here. We don't need money from anybody. We're never asking for money. When we have the momentum, when we have the people, when we have the groups involved, and, there's, say, millions of people doing what we're aiming to do, then each person can give $1. And then with that nominal amount, you have a community that really can have that powerful, locomotive train momentum. And you are saying the exact same thing. You're saying, take off your capitalist hat. Don't think about measures and metrics that way. Think about it in the core, in your spiritual core, in the values. What is it that all the money in the world, if you had it, what would it do for you? Because just having the money doesn't make you happy. It's what you do with the money. And now imagine if you could do things that make the whole world ultimately happy, even the animal, even the tree.
Yes.
Do that. And that's what you are doing with Thrive by Character. So, bravo. I love what you're doing.
Bravo to you. Thank you.
I want to ask you about your wife, because I didn't know until somebody shared with me that she donated her kidney I think it was like around Christmas time or something that she did that. And I said, no, he did. And they said, no, she did. And I said, no, I know that he did. And so we went and researched and we're like, both of you did. And so, but what I want to know is, okay, what you both did is next level, altruism and love and compassion. I mean, that's where everybody can only aspire to be. But my question is not that. When you saw your wife do this, what did that teach you about your partnership? Because that's what marriage is. That moment when I heard that story between both of you, I was like, that's marriage. It's not how rich he is. If she was a beauty pageant, if she's the daughter of so-and-so, if he's the son of so-and-so, it's especially in religious communities, like you get favors when you're the son of some big religious figure or daughter or something, and you marry into a family and all those things. And all of that aside, there is this love, togetherness, there's this partnership, there's this alignment in their mission. There's all these reasons why God ordained marriage in the first place religiously. And in an atheist world, it is that momentum of if you can do something yourself to an extent and you have a partner that aligns with you, that fortifies that momentum, then you're a perfect pair. Even in the worst of it, Bonnie and Clyde in the United States, right? Even that story, there was harmony in the marriage. I mean, that's why the story became so powerful, because that love was really aligned. As horrible as what they did was, it was really aligned. So I bring that example to show that. I find your marriage is in that place now too. I mean, you have this alignment of togetherness. You don't go to the office and your wife is doing her thing and you guys don't talk about work like many people in the world. No, work is not work. Work is a part of your relationship. So this is the love I want you to explain to people. This is marriage.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. And I'll start by saying that I don't think I experienced primarily the kidney relationship as altruistic, because I felt I gained so much more than I gave by just having a sense of our interconnectivity, what you talked about earlier, that sense that we literally on a physical and spiritual level, we're all in this together. And we can know that up here, but the furthest pathway is the path from the brain to the heart. So how do we really feel in our organs that sense of interconnectivity? And I feel a sense of awe that everything is miraculous. Science is miraculous, what we're able to do today. Kindness is miraculous, what we're able to do today. And I feel that's the number one trait to think about in a life partner, yes, there's core values and there's lifestyle and there's career and there's all these different things to think about with a partner. But at the end of the day, we want a partner who wants to put in kindness in the world with us. And I'm so fortunate to have found someone who lives every day with kindness. And she said to me when I was donating my kidney, I want to do it too when I'm done having children. And lots of people say things like that, but she really meant it. And then when the time was right, she said, I'm in. I'm in. And it's a remarkable thing to not only trust the love of a partner for how they love us, but to trust their love for how they love the world, and other people. And so I give that blessing back to you, and I hope you'll give it back to me, that we continue to live with a compassion and love in different ways. Not everyone's going to donate a kidney. There's so many ways to show love in the world. That all of us find our unique calling to just put more love in the world, and that we have people, whether it's a spouse, it's a friend, it's a sibling, people who we're close to who inspire us to love more.
I'm just taking all of that in. That was well said. Thank you. Last question. Let's imagine for a moment that you became the most influential person in the world. You were the guide in moral authority. What is the first action you take to ignite a global shift towards harmony, towards living in social harmony? And I ask you this because, you have a sense of what harmony should look like way beyond the, narrow lens of your own estate, for example, because for a lot of people, harmony is, oh, I wish my neighbor wouldn't do this, or I wish I had more land so I could do this. And it stops with them always. And, your activism for animals, your care for the environment, your religious criticisms and movements and the things you do, even just the advocacy you bring to the table through that power. It covers and refugee work and like I said, so many things. It just covers so many areas. So when I hear from you now, that one thing that you think is the key to just unlock everything in the world is going to be momentous. So go ahead.
So as always, your questions are so brilliant. And I think that this is how all of us should view ourselves, in this way. Cause we never know what tips the scales in the world. And it's so easy to be an armchair critic. Oh, everyone else is doing it wrong. But if we view ourselves as having that power of influence, what would we do? What would we do today, right now? Right. And I also love, because I have no interest in formal authority of being elected to some position, but moral authority, that's something to really strive for. And so the first thing I want to do is apologize for my inadequacies, just knowing how inadequate I would be to be of such a level of moral authority. The second I would want to do is to think about my own hypocrisies, of my own vices. And yet, if I'm viewed as this moral authority, try to meet this bar of expectation. If you think I'm this level of moral authority, rather than just say, no, I'm not, try to meet that level to really rise to that occasion. But I think, it's such a fascinating question. Would I want a day of global meditation? Would I want a day of a global workshop on character? What would I want to call for if I had such an influence? And, I'm so humbled by the question, because I think once again, it comes back to, rather than what I would call other people to do, it's what I would call myself to do. What's the first action I would want towards this global harmony? I would just want to raise the bar for myself, not in some just level of sacrifice, but in a way of harmonization, of reaching this next level of enlightenment to live by this level of compassion and love, for all. And I feel that, that moment is right now. There's a story about, someone in prison where the jailer comes to him and says, you can choose one day of the year to be free. what day do you choose? And he's thinking, do I choose this special day or that special day? And he says, today. I choose today. Because right now, we are all moral authorities of the highest level. And today is the day we get to choose to live by these deepest truths. And so, I give that blessing to you, and I hope you give it back to me that today can be the day when we don't wait any longer to seek to thrive by being our best selves in the world. And if we can all do that, if we can all see our commonalities rather than just our differences, if we can all see the potential for impact by little choices, I think this world is going to become so much more beautiful today.
Rabbi Shmuly, thank you for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues, and thank you for your reminder that character isn't the leftover of life, it's the foundation. Your work shows us that the root of compassion, equity, and fairness isn't just policies and law, it's who we become. In a fractured world and a time, you invite us not just to fix systems, but to forge ourselves anew. In exactly what you said you would change, you went to yourself and started inwards. For when our souls are aligned, our actions will truly heal the world. To our audience, please subscribe to the Compassiviste Dialogues and channel and share this episode so I can bring you more amazing people like Rabbi Shmuly doing the kind of work he does. And follow us on our social media. All links to Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz, Thrive by Character, and Compassiviste are listed below. Make sure you connect with Rabbi Shmuly. He's doing amazing work, and it goes way beyond religion or any political side that you're on or anything like that. It goes into your soul. So please connect with Rabbi Shmuly on a lot of the different things he's doing. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horiat.